Let me clear something here on Instagram. All right, there we go. Okay, looks like ready to go. Hey Instagram, hey YouTube and Facebook. Hope you're having a good day so far. Welcome to episode number 18 of Tuesday Talks with Azren. If you are new to the segment on my Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, it's pretty straightforward. This is a weekly segment every Tuesday at 12 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. That's the name of my time zone where I live. And I talk about a different language learning topic. The structure is the same every single week. First, I answer the most popular topic that was voted in that week. I have a Facebook group that is called the Language Learning Nerds, and people vote on a topic every week. And I talk about the most popular topic that was voted in. And then the second part is where I answer any questions from the chat. So anyone who's watching live, you're welcome to type in any questions or topics or comments that you have. And then I go through those questions, I go through those comments. And yeah, that's basically the format of this weekly video. So the most popular topic that was voted in for this week is how many words you need to know in a foreign language before you can be considered to be conversational. And so I'd like to talk about that. There's a pretty short answer to this question. There's a very simplistic way I can answer it, but there's a little bit more that I think is important to layer on to the answer. So the simplistic answer is you probably need to know a few thousand words, something between, I would say, 1,000 to 4,000, a few thousand words before you're going to be pretty conversational in another language. But the more important thing for us to look at is not how many words you need to know. That's not actually super important. What's more important is that I don't want you to have the number of words as your North Star. Don't have the number of words as your North Star. In other words, I don't want you to strive to increase the number of words you know and track the number of words you know and care only about the number of words that you've learned. That's not going to be what helps you to become fluent in another language, because language learning is not simply about memorizing a whole bunch of words and memorizing vocabulary lists. That's not what it's about. And if the top question in your mind is, how many words do I need to know? Well, that shows me that you likely are not in the right mindset when you're approaching your target language. So even though the answer to the question is you need to know roughly 1, 2, 3, or 4,000 words, the irony of the situation is I don't want you to go and try to learn a few thousand words as quickly as you possibly can, because what's going to happen is, A, you're either going to struggle to remember them all because the approach you use is going to be, how can I memorize all these word lists? And that's not going to work for you. Or B, even if you do go learn all these 1,000 words, 2,000 words, you do go learn all those words and you choose to do that. Well, what's going to end up happening is they're going to be in your head, but you have to also know how to use them. You have to know how to apply them. You have to be able to use them in the moment where it's required for you to find the right word. It's not a matter of cramming it into your mind. Does that make sense? So that's incredibly important for us to realize. The second thing I wanted to layer on this equation is, and this is actually important, I think a lot of people wonder about this too. I saw this in the comments of the survey that I posted, or rather someone on my team posted, which was, yes, how many words do I have to know? And what words should I study first? How do I know what vocabulary I need to know first? Well, again, there's a couple of ways to answer this question, and it's not a very complex answer in my opinion. In terms of what words to learn first, there's two ways you can view it. The first way is think about what words and phrases and vocabulary you would actually need to use first. For example, I went to Germany last year. I don't speak German. I just don't speak the language. And I wanted to learn some German before going to Germany. So I remember thinking to myself, okay, what am I going to need to know? What kinds of things do I have to know? And in my case, it was helpful to know even to know how to say hello, please, thank you. I needed to know how to say I want or I would like, because if I was going to restaurants or fast food places and I wanted to order something, it was important for me to know how to say, oh, I want this, I want that, I would like this, thank you, please. A lot of niceties. Those were the kinds of things I needed immediately right away. And those were very, very important to me. So I would think about what kinds of things do you think you would need first and you would need immediately. That's going to help guide you in the right direction. The other way you can do it, and this is probably maybe a simpler way to view it, I suppose. A simpler way to view it is, instead of trying to invent the wheel, in other words, instead of trying to figure out what word should I study first, follow a pre-established program. Follow a program that was made by somebody else. For example, as you guys know, on Tuesdays, so today, in the evening time at 8:30 p.m., I do a weekly teaching workshop. I do a workshop on how to teach foreign languages. I probably need to change the date of that, because as I'm saying it out loud, I'm realizing 2 things on a Tuesday. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's besides the point. Last week, somebody asked me, how should I teach Indonesian? And I told them, go to YouTube, find a textbook or find a program and just follow that program. You can layer your own experience onto the program, so you're not just teaching purely out of a textbook, and to ensure the class isn't boring, but go do that. And I think for language learners, it's the same thing. Instead of you trying to figure out what words should you go learn, well, that's kind of silly. Go find a program, a textbook, a class, right? A textbook, a teach yourself program, or a class that already has their program established, and go learn based on the program. I think that's a very simple way it's a very simple answer that'll work for a lot of people, that are watching this. The last thing, well, I don't know the last thing, but the next thing I'd like to say on this topic that applies, I would say primarily to intermediate speakers, or maybe even advanced speakers of another language. I don't think what I'm about to say applies so much to beginners. But one strategy you might also choose to use is you may choose to really specialize in specific fields. In other words, you might be, for example, I'm actually thinking about this personally. You might speak Mandarin or French or Spanish or English reasonably well. Like I speak, for example, Gujarati, what I speak with my family. I speak it reasonably well. I speak Mandarin reasonably well. I'm reasonably comfortable in those languages. Pretty good. But there are certain topics that I know almost nothing about. So for example, in Mandarin, I know nothing about, for instance, like if I were to go into soccer terminology, like the positions that players play, the soccer ball, shooting, scoring, I know literally nothing. I don't know any of it, like zero, almost nothing, maybe 1 or 2 words. So what I might choose to do is I might choose soccer, and I might go learn all the words that have to do with soccer, because I recognize I don't know much about that topic. So once you're at the intermediate phase or an advanced phase, especially for advanced, I would say, it's not necessarily a bad idea for you to go and pick specific topics that interest you and go learn the vocabulary needed to become functional and talk about that specific topic. I think that can be a really good idea as well. Okay, I don't think I have much else I want to say, so why don't we see if there's any questions? I don't see much going on so far, but I'll invite questions now. If you have questions or topics you'd like to see me talk about, please type them into the chat. And if we have any, I'm happy to answer them. So let me just go over to Instagram to start. Are there any questions on Instagram? I don't see any questions on Instagram, so I'll move on to another platform here. If you have a question or comment, I'm happy to answer it. Let me check Facebook next. Let's see if there's any questions on Facebook. Looks like Kaiman's here. Nice to see you, Kaiman. Or is it Kaiman or Kaiman? I always forget how to pronounce your name. Every time I always forget. So let me read his question here. Hi, Azren. Which CEFR level can one expect to be able to passively comprehend another language? By that, I mean the comprehension happens automatically with little or no concerted effort. I'm working on my French comprehension. Cool. And while I see improvements, comprehension requires a really conscious focus. At what level does comprehension occur at or near the level of one's mother tongue? Great question. So for you to understand, for example, French as easily as you understand English, that's probably happening somewhere around a C1 level, C1, C2, C1, C2, if you're comparing it to your English. However, I think a better way to view it is not necessarily how. I think a better way to look at that question, a better way to frame that question up, is not when will I understand French passively like I do in English. I think the better question is when can you turn on TV or talk to someone in French? When can you hear French and be able to understand most of what people are saying with a moderate amount of effort? That's probably a better way to view it. Like, that's probably a better way to view it, because that is quite achieving a C. I think that's a better way to view it, because achieving a C1 to C2 level, while that is possible and lots of people do it, it's such a far out goal that for many people it can be discouraging. It can be discouraging every day that they're not at that level. And they're like, oh my God, I'm still not there. I still can't understand passively. Oh, I still don't understand passively. Oh, maybe I can try this strategy that Azren said in the video and I'll be able to understand passively. And the reality is, for most people, especially because I know Kaiman a little bit, especially with how much French you know right now, I think you're likely still years away. You're years away from being able to understand passively. And I think for many that can be discouraging. It can be discouraging to view it that way. So I think that a better question to think about is, how can I get to a point where I can understand most of what people say, at least the majority of what people say, with a moderate amount of effort? I think that's probably a better way to view it. So, but the direct answer to your question is probably C1, maybe C2, somewhere in there. B2 to an extent as well. If you're at a B2, depending on what they're talking about, a lot of stuff you'll understand without much effort. It just depends on the topic and what you're talking about, and that it's not like 100%. But once you're in the C's on the CEFR scale, then most of what you hear is going to be pretty passive. B2, a certain percentage you'll understand passively, and a certain percentage no. Okay, let me see if we have other questions here. I see some more questions on Facebook. How to memorize tons of new words. If you want to memorize tons of new words, the only way that I know how to do so is consistent practice over a number of years. I don't think usually when people ask me, how do I memorize tons of new words? The mindset of the person asking the question is, okay, I want to go learn lots of words as fast as I can. Usually that's the mindset they're in. And I haven't personally found any ways to go learn a whole bunch of words as fast as possible. I haven't really found a way to do that. In my experience, it tends to take time, patience, months and months of consistent work. It's like if I asked someone, I don't have a 6-pack. I have a 1-pack. I have no muscles on my belly. Like, it's just I'm not fat per se, but there's some chub there. It's just got about a little bit of chub. But there's no muscles there. And if I wanted a 6-pack, or even if I wanted to have a toned, kind of strong stomach, and I said, how do I do that as fast as possible? Well, it's not really something that can necessarily happen super quick. I've been trying to get more flexible, and I stretch every day, and I see minimal progress. I progress, I notice the progress, but it doesn't happen quickly. The only perhaps answer I can give is if you put a full-time effort towards learning a language, if you put in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day and you did that for 6 months, you'll learn a ton of new words pretty darn quick. So next question I see coming from Facebook as well. I see lots of questions coming now. Good. I see lots coming through. So what's the most effective way to improve your writing skills? Great question. For writing, first of all, I think writing regularly, write as often as you can. Practice your writing and just get used to communicating in a written context. That's going to help a lot. I think actively learning about what constitutes as good writing. So everybody's writing different things. Maybe, Hassan, you're thinking of essays. Maybe you're thinking of emails. Maybe you're thinking, when you think of the word writing, I'm not sure where your mind goes. But whatever form of writing you're thinking about, there's certain rules, I suppose, that constitute effective writing in that manner. So for example, a good email has certain structure to it. You don't write in all caps lock. You need to have an email signature. There's certain rules. A good essay has different rules. So a good persuasive essay is different than narrative writing. Storytelling is different than texting. There's different elements to writing. So whatever form of writing you're thinking about, you also need to learn about how do you get good at that type of writing? What is a good email? What is a good essay? How do you write a story? And Google it and YouTube it and research it and watch videos about it. I get better at writing every day. I teach writing to people and I learn all sorts of stuff every day when I teach writing. I have students that we focus only on writing. I learn all sorts of stuff. I'm doing a lit study with someone in French right now. We're like reading French literature together. She's my student and we're like discussing it and stuff. Like, it's not writing, I suppose. It's a bad example. I'll give you a better example. I used to have a student very recent. Before, she used to only do writing and she would write stuff and we would look at her writing, we debate it, we look at the word choice and yeah. What's the most effective way to improve your writing skills without getting bored? A few things. Write about things that matter to you, that are interesting to you, I'd say. I would say find an amount of writing practice you can do. Don't do so much writing in a single day where you get incredibly bored and you don't want to do it the next day. Keep your boredom at like an average level so that you can convince yourself to go and learn and practice regularly. If you hate it, you're eventually going to stop doing it. But if you just kind of don't like it, you might still do it a couple times a week and practice for like the next 3 years. Does that make sense? And Hassan's asking he just clarified here. He's asking about academic writing. Yeah, I think you need to go learn about you need to go watch probably 5 hours of YouTube videos about academic writing, educate yourself about what makes good essays. How do you write argumentative essays? How do you make a good bibliography? How do you do your references? What are the biggest mistakes people are making? And then I also think you do need to find someone who's very strong at academic writing. Myself, I'm happy to do it. It's a paid service. You'd have to pay me, obviously, but I do. That is something I work with people on to help them with their academic writing. I do think you have to hire someone or find someone who's very good at academic writing and who can explain it to you, and work with them on a weekly basis for a number of months to get feedback on your writing. Otherwise, your writing won't improve very quickly. Writing is one of those things where you need feedback. You must have feedback. I'm going to say this over and over. I'm going to say like 5 times. It is incredibly difficult, maybe even impossible to drastically improve your academic writing by yourself. It is incredibly difficult, maybe even impossible, for you to improve your academic writing skills, even writing skills, by yourself without external help. It is incredibly difficult. It is almost impossible to drastically improve your writing by yourself. It's in my experience anyway. In my experience. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my personal experience with it. You need that feedback. Okay, let's look at more questions here. Let me hop over to YouTube. I see this question on Instagram too, so I will get to those. Hello, Tessa. Nice to see you. You might want to dive into info on minimalistic communication via Talkie Pona. You can accomplish a lot with 120 or so words and stronger grammar, describing things versus knowing every word. Less helpful when someone speaks to you with many specific words, but being willing to substitute what you want to say with what you need to communicate can often get your point across. Yes, that is a good point. Yeah, so basically, there's a word for it. There's a linguistic term for it. I think it's called, I can't remember. There's a term for if you don't know a word, the specific word for something, you can still get the same message across by finding synonyms and other ways to say it. So that's definitely a great point, Tessa. Okay, let me look. I saw a bunch of stuff on Instagram. Let me just scroll through here. Language Mugs asks, this may be off topic, but how do you stay motivated? Good question. There's a few things. Number one, you've got to study the language in a way that you enjoy, that you enjoy doing, has to be enjoyable for you. I think patience is a big thing. Often a lack of motivation comes from the fact that you want to get better at the language very quickly and faster, and you're expecting kind of faster results in what you're getting, so you get demotivated. So I would say focus on the process of learning the language and focus less on the results. I think that's a really big thing. I think those are a couple things that come to mind. Let's see here. How do you find language parents? Do you know any good platforms or ways to do so? So Queenie, whatever. Queenia Harris. Yeah, good question. So by language parents, if I understand what you're saying, and if I am understanding it the way that you intend it, a language parent would be someone who you hang out, who basically, the same way that when you're a child, the initial people you learn language from is from your parents. Well, when you're learning a second language, you need kind of you don't need, but it's really nice to have some consistent people that you're consistently around, and they kind of become your language parents, and you're acquiring the language from them. So yeah, I mean, I think the internet has lots of platforms, Hello Talk, italki. After all this COVID blows over, if you can set up a couch surfing account, you might get some tourists coming, living at your house from different places, and that could be a great way to meet people. Instagram, Facebook groups. Basically, you have to, so go into, like, for example, go into a Facebook group, go join Facebook groups about language learning, and start commenting on people's posts. Don't comment, don't spam people, but comment and start to share your 2 cents about what people are commenting in the group, and you're going to start to make new friends. And as you make those new online friends, they can become like your language parents. That's a great way to do it. Another way you could do it is just to pay a private tutor. They can become a language parent for you. Like, pay a private tutor, and they can become that. Yeah, there's a few thoughts. So, okay, let me look at one more quick peek to see if there's any other questions I missed. No, I don't see any questions I missed. So nothing else. All right, everybody, thank you for watching. I appreciate your attention. Goodbye, YouTube. We'll end you first today. See you, YouTube. See you next week. Same time, same place.